All right, Brian, we have returned. There was luckily some more exciting news that happened right after the end of last 2 weeks ago show. I'm in the habit of saying last week's, but Boxscore Geeks, and we're back. It is the NBA offseason. It is in full swing or already over if you ask Draymond Green. I'm your host, Ray Alvarez, found most places as Nerd Numbers. With me, as always, is my producer, voice of God, man of many hats, co-host Brian Foster. Brian, it doesn't look like the Warriors have done lots of moving and shaking. How you feeling about that?
Yeah, they've added 0 players so far in free agency, but that's fine with me because even if free agency is already over, the NBA itself is back. The summer league is here, and I'm watching all the games. I love it, Trey.
All right. Well, I mean, yeah, the question we have for the Warriors already, I think they did the issue they had is exactly what Draymond Green was talking about. I think they just like wrapped up the extensions their young player quick. So as mentioned, this week's show is actually pretty straightforward. We're going to go over some transactions that happened after last show, and we're going to talk a major betting scandal story. And Brian, I'm going to give a spoiler alert why the train has left the station and it doesn't matter. And I think you and I have kind of had that attitude a lot, and we're just going to reinforce it.
Yeah.
All right. Now, if I'm good if you are, Brian, I'm going to look at ESPN.com transaction and start after the last ones we discussed. And I think we maybe even missed a few, or actually we didn't miss much.
We
I
did. Yeah,
guess
there was 3 big deals last week to talk about, and we only talked about the Durant one. I forget what the other 2 were, though.
All right. Well, in terms of some of the other things, so Pat Connaughton, did I get it right?
Yep.
Goes back to the Bucks, and I think that's actually oh wait, so he goes to the Hornets. This is baffling. I don't.
It's a
This is going to
straight
be
salary dump
this is
because it was part of, renouncing Damian Lillard so they could sign Miles Turner.
Oh, actually, that is the big move, actually, Brian, that I don't think we got a chance to discuss, which
Yeah,
is
that happened more recently. Yeah.
the Bucks. So Damian Lillard, one of the many people that fell to the Achilles like freight train that hit the NBA last season. So both Damian Lillard and Tyrese Halliburton are out for next season. And the Bucks did a very baffling thing, which is they basically just decided to eat Damian Lillard's contract. And I kind of get it because it's saying, hey, let's free up the space. We got that roster spot. But what kind of makes it baffling is, let me take a look. I think he had like 2 or 3 years left, even after next season.
Who, Connaughton or Lillard?
Or Lillard. Lillard
Lillard
did.
Lillard has next season and the season after that.
So
So what they did is
base
they stretched it those 2 years to 4 years.
yeah, so they stretch it longer, but essentially they said instead of paying Lillard 50 million in 2025, 2026, we're just going to eat it and trust that he doesn't come back. I hate to say I think they're right. I'm not sure if they could have tried to keep him on and done it. I don't remember like the insurance rules or whatever. I remember way, way, way back in the day with it's Darius, I want to say Miller with the Memphis Grizzlies. They had Darius Miles, not Miller. So Darius
Oh, okay,
Miles
okay.
was drafted by I think the Clippers.
Correct,
Oh
correct.
wow, look at me remember. The reason I remember a lot of this, he was in a really bad movie
Oh, that's fun.
about
He was
kids
also one
cheating.
of the first high school players
He
in
was,
that
well,
era.
what's
Yeah.
funny, he was in a bad movie about cheating on the SATs. And in the movie, he's a high school basketball player that's told you're not prepared to go to the NBA yet. You need to go to college. And then in real life, he's a high schooler that goes straight out, and he's actually really good. Classic story up there with Sean Livingston gets injured, and that ends up happening, and he winds up on Portland, and then Portland waives him, but uses insurance to basically say, hey, he's injured, he can't play. So they're able to waive him, but they think they get the money back. And then he winds up playing 34 games with Memphis to try and get a comeback. And at the time, I recall Portland was trying to mail to say, don't let him play any more games because that would have hurt them, their like salary claim. And so that's a question with Lillard is if they could have done something like that. But I guess they basically just said, hey, he's probably done. We'd rather just, stretch out the loss over a couple of years instead of one. But then I think what you're saying is Pat Connaughton is like a byproduct of that, is because now they have to kind of make up that loss.
Yeah, here's I think how people are interpreting this situation. Okay, so you know how the way NBA media goes right now, right during the off season is sometimes players and agents will come out and make their own statements. LeBron famously does that all the time, right? But a lot of them don't. A lot of them will talk through, Shams or whoever is your favorite, insider
Yep.
reporter, and we get all these. And you know the infamous phrase, Dre, right? This player, according to sources, is monitoring the situation, right? There, there's breaking news. Player X is monitoring the situation, is what we're hearing a lot. So yeah, we got a report like this on Giannis, and I guess LeBron himself is willing to do that as well, even if he does talk. So to me, both of those are the same, right? It just means I'm a superstar player, and ownership don't forget about it. I want to win. So here's what I'm getting at with the Bucks. Giannis is either gonna demand a trade or not, and it seems like they're doing everything they can, even you know maybe questionable signings like Miles Turner, to try to build some kind of a team for next year to win some games and keep Giannis from demanding a trade. Now, I think that's a good idea in principle because I think he is the whole franchise, and you've already done all these trades, right? You sent all these first round picks to, I guess it was for Drew Holiday originally, right? The point is they don't have draft pick assets anymore, so they can either just tank or try to win with Giannis, and they're trying to win with Giannis. Now the downside is, what happens if they still don't win after spending this money and digging himself a deeper hole, and Giannis still demands a trade at the trade deadline? Then they're really sunk. But I think it's a worthwhile gambit. Ride that Giannis train.
Well, it's worth noting this was our, I don't want to necessarily say debate, but when they signed Damian Lillard and traded out Drew Holiday, and I'm still shocked that the Memphis Grizzlies won that trade, or not the Memphis Grizzlies, the Boston Celtics won that trade despite not being the principal players, right? Like Portland somehow lost the Damian Lillard trade. So when that happened, that was enough to convince Giannis to resign. So we're going to 2025, 2026 season. And essentially, by the end, the question is exactly what you're saying. Is he going to be demanding a trade this year? Now, they have some leverage in that they've got him signed through 2027. And then he does have I don't know if it's a player option in 2028. So they have him for 2 more years guaranteed. But the question they're going for is, can they convince him in the next year and a half to want to re-sign with him? And I mean, that does seem like the right play, which has paid off for them in the past. He's only, I'll put in quotes, 30 years old. So, he'll still only be 32. There is some question about, athleticism. Is he the type of player that's going to keep going late? But, player probably is pretty similar to his LeBron James. So it depends on what he decides to do. So I think you're right where they're gambling to say, can we make moves that can convince Giannis to stay? And to be mean, in past we have seen these type of moves where it's going, Giannis may not be a great GM, right? Drew Holiday was probably more of what that team needed than Damian Lillard. Uh, Production wise, they were about the same. Drew Holiday gives you more defense. Damian Lillard gives you more offense. And if you were going to go with Damian Lillard, then by the way, you needed to get rid of Brook Lopez, but is what it is. So they did that. And then, as you're saying, so the major moves we missed, Damian Lillard got waived essentially, but it also because he's out next year with injury. So is Tyrese Halliburton. Byproduct of Tyrese Halliburton being out may be really weird in Indiana's favor is Miles Turner walked. And I talked about this last time where I said if you looked at the Indiana Pacers in the NBA Finals, one of their weak spots was Miles Turner. Pascal Siakam, who in past we've called like overrated, and back in the day when it was kind of a fire sale on Toronto. And Brian, this don't you love that this is a common phrase on the show? Brian, you were right. You made the observation when the Toronto Raptors kind of got plucked dry, and I think it was Pascal, and who was the other player that got shipped
OG
out?
Anunoby went to the Knicks.
OG Anunoby. So when those two players left, I was kind of like, well, if you look at their production on the team, they're not amazing, and probably good riddance. And you kind of just said, hey, these players were good. These players were good for Toronto kind of before they lost Kawhi. And then when they lost Kawhi, there was this vacuum, and these other players tried to fill it. And if OG Anunoby and Pascal go to teams that are more fleshed out, they're going to go back to doing the productive things they're good at, and not trying to just be the primary scorers. And that'll work out well. And unfortunately, the only thing it does seem to me that actually, this isn't the answer. OG Anunoby out in New York just got played bigger. So production wise, stayed about the same. He's getting played out of position. That's nothing new. New York loves playing productive forwards out of position, but still doing good. And he was an enjoyable player last year. Pascal on Indiana has played really well and was like pivotal in the finals. And I'd be curious to your opinion. I assume, Brian, that Pascal's one of those players that, the eye test, the thing like you use kind of will say he is better on defense, right? Like you can probably even give him a little extra boost.
Uh, that's a good question. I don't have a big opinion about his defense, but
Oh,
I do think his offense is pretty good. Um, Actually, I'm not familiar with the Pacers defense at all. I know that Miles Turner is the big shot blocker, but I don't know the full body of work. So yeah, I got
yeah.
nothing on that one.
But I mean, basically, OG Anunoby or Pascal Siakam went from being a below average player for Toronto to an above average player with Indiana, and then like a pivotal part of a title run.
Yeah.
So, but Miles Turner was, in my opinion, the weak spot, and I just was like,
On
I
offense,
don't.
definitely.
I'm like, I don't, it's like, it feels bad to be like, I don't care how good he is on defense. I don't care. Like, he was negative wins produced. Now, maybe you can give him a benefit of the doubt with defense to move him to zero. And that's not good. Zero means like your team doesn't win any games. So 100 means your team wins 41 games, zero means your team wins no games. And the problem is, kind of the evolving NBA, which we may talk when we get to like Draymond Green's point on the offseason. It's just Miles Turner does not compete with modern centers in production to be able to be the person you're using as your starting center. So the Pacers lose Miles Turner and Tyrese Halliburton for next season. And no question, that sucks. Like, there's no real way out of it. And I don't, at least looking at transactions, I don't think, they picked up James Wiseman as a stopgap. If James Wiseman works on the Pacers of all teams, I'm just gonna laugh.
He was there last year, I think.
Let's take a look, Brian. I mean, he's never really been good, and I do feel James Wiseman is kind of a Kwame Brown situation
Yeah,
where I
the
think
thing to consider about James Wiseman is he's been in the league for 4 or 5 years, but he's still only like 23. He's really young. So maybe he'll find somewhere where he can figure it out. But when I've because he did start in the Warriors, right? So I've watched him play quite a bit, at least that year. He's just one of those guys who wants to look for his own shot. He doesn't want to really rebound and play defense. So he's gonna have to figure that out.
although, what I do love, Brian, is he does have a ring, although I don't think he got to play. That's a bummer. He
Oh,
he does have a ring with the Warriors, but
that's funny.
unfortunately, and then technically he was on the Pacers. So I guess he's been to the final, we are making fun of this pre-show, Brian. In the off season, um, beat writers and news aggregators have to get creative in their headlines. And so it'll be like, this team is targeting multiple star, and you look and they're talking about Ben Simmons. I hate to be mean, but Ben Simmons probably, I think you even liked him, and I think this bore out last year where it's like he is a good, I would like to call him like a relief pitcher. I think he is a productive player, but I think he is past the days of being able to play major minutes. Last season for both LA and Brooklyn, he looked good. And I'm actually going to see if he was able to play any of the playoffs. I mean, I know the I know the Clippers fell to the Nuggets, but I mean, that was expected. So yeah, last year he did manage to play in the playoffs, played minimal minutes, didn't look great, unfortunately. So that's kind of hard to tell, but it was only like 8, 9 minutes a game. But if you sign him for nothing, it's fine, but he's not a star. So that's what I'm kind of laughing about. So yeah, James Wiseman, two-time NBA finalist, was signed by the Pacers. So the Pacers are kind of just trying to stop the bleeding for the season. But if the Pacers can pick up a decent center, and the Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton, case in point, are capable of finding, an undervalued center, or heck, maybe Sabonis wants to come back, right? Because I think he wants out of Sacramento. Let's say they get Sabonis back, they get Sabonis and Halliburton on a team together, and boom, off to the races.
Yeah, that'd be funny. I mean, I think they're just they're doing the opposite of the Bucks. They're saying we've got Halliburton under contract. He's not going to go anywhere when he's hurt, so we're just going to take this next year off.
Or do minimal. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what you need to do in the NBA, and this is one of the things we talk about in the NBA in terms of trades, et cetera, is you do have to make sure you actually have the pieces to make it move. And I got a fun, nice comparable, Brian. So some people talk about Amazon. If you ever get a box from Amazon and it's too big, right? And they go, what are they doing? And what I have heard, and this might be true, is that the box is actually more efficient than you think, because to send out a complete truck, they need a certain amount of stuff filled. And so if you ship an empty box, you let a whole truck go. And that relates to the NBA because of salary cap rules, player rules, et cetera. You either need like player exceptions, which we'll talk in a bit, Brian, when we get to the Nuggets, or you need players and or contracts that work for trading. And the Warriors are one of the few teams I have seen do this, where we have said Brandon Ingram is a horrible pickup. What are they doing? And managed to ship him out. Or we have said, what are they doing giving Jordan Poole that big extension? That only makes sense if they're going to trade it for a productive player. Lo and behold, they managed to do it. So it's just going, if you look at what the Pacers are doing, if the Pacers just make sure they have players that are available to be able to trade for better ones if they need it. And I will say, I believe Pritchard is still the GM out there, and he is one of those GMs that I actually have a lot of respect for, even if he named something that I agree with but hate. I don't know if you remember this, Brian. Do you remember the treadmill of mediocrity? He's the one who named that. He named the treadmill of mediocrity, which says the worst place to be in the NBA is the treadmill of mediocrity, because you only sign mid-level players in the draft and you don't hit anybody, and then after a few years the league gets sick of you and kicks you out. That was him explaining his time in Portland, where Portland was kind of getting frustrated that he couldn't get him over the hump. But then you look and he goes to Indiana, and he has done well in Indiana, doing many of the wages of wins things we love. And he has been there for a minute now, I want to say. Let's see if I can find yeah. But anyway, so I mean, I guess that's what I'll point out is like I actually do have faith in Kevin Pritchard, who's been there since 2018. So he has been in Indiana since 2018. And in that time frame, they've, made the playoffs 5 times, made it all the way back to the finals. And there was a 3-year period where they did go downhill, but they kept their heads on, right? So it's like the Pacers in 2021. I forget who they lost the year before, probably Paul George, right? So they like lose that, or they lost like Paul George the year before. They start shedding players like Malcolm Brogdon. He keeps on. And I think if he can find a productive center and Tyrese Halliburton can rehab, they could be a force in 2026. So, and yeah, so we'll see. I mean, I get excited about these moves, and it's a little further up the list, which is fine. But when you trade a player to a different scenario, I'm like, how are they going to behave? And as mentioned, you brought this up with Toronto, with OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam, which is just like, hey, if these teams go to a different situation, are they going to do better? And that, by the way, is one of the, real issues I do have with a lot of analytics, us included. If you want to use wins produced, which, we do use as our formula of choice around here, formula by Dave Barry, it just kind of directly maps box scores to wins. If you talk to Dave about it, he notes that one, included in the formula are team and position factors. which means if a player moves teams, you have to start considering those factors. It's not just we take a star player. Well, actually, it's just as annoying. It's not just you take a player A from team A and put him on team B and he's going to be just as productive. It's like, what role is he going to play? How many shots is he going to get? How good of a passer, whatever, are his teammates? But the one cheat code does seem to be star players are star players. And they might dip a little in production or ebb, depending on a better or worse fit. But stars are stars are stars because they're just that much, they can take those hits. An average player, you hit an average player 10% in their assists and 10% in their rebounds, and they go from being average to good or average to below average. You take a star and you knock both their assists and rebounds by 10%, and they're like, I'm still a star.
Mm.
All right. We get some sad ones. We basically do get two dumps in a row that I think we already mentioned. Pat Connaughton and Kristaps Porzingis were both traded. I'm kind of shocked because the Hawks had made some good moves. I think I already mentioned one, right? Getting Nickeil Alexander-Walker from Minnesota was a good pickup, and then they pick up Kristaps Porzingis for Niang. And this is really weird because I don't know production-wise what's that's going to look like. Kristaps Porzingis was an above average player for the Celtics, but to what we were just saying, the Celtics are a team that traditionally makes players look better. They play good team ball. They have a good understanding of how to use players to their max. So if you pick up a player from the Celtics, unless you are picking up their system, there's a chance they're going to get worse. Also, the reason they're moving on from Kristaps is he's expensive. He's over 20 million a year and he just keeps getting injured. So, he helped them to a title. He was even injured in the playoffs for that title run. Last year he was injured. Niang is terrible, so I do got to believe that the Celtics are just going to waive him and just want the draft consideration or just moving on from the contract. And the Bucks moving on from Connaughton is just kind of sad because I think they're saving like 2 million and they're letting a productive player out the door, but that's to afford stretching Damian Lillard and picking up Miles Turner in a hope of placating Giannis Antetokounmpo. And we'll see because the Bucks without doubt are going to be a worse team next season. And we will see if Giannis is like, I think you've done enough, or if he's just going to go, hey, you've gotten too bad, get me out of here.
Yeah, I want to see what Miles Turner looks like on a different team. I'm worried though that effect we like to talk about, where now that he's paid, he's going to get more aggressive on offense, and that's bad for Turner. Like he needs to he needs to be a 3-and-D type of center, protect the rim. You know, I don't know. They're turning over so much that I'm not sure what kind of team it's going to be like, but yeah, I mean, from that last segment, I'm very suspicious they're not going to be good enough still, despite spending all this money.
Now, Brian, I feel a little sad. The next one is good. So the Celtics picked up Josh Minott and Luke Garza, who are both Minnesota players. So Minnesota keeps letting these like productive players out the door, and that's a bit of a bummer. Garza, it's hard to say. He hasn't played any minutes, but he's young. So it's, either a warm body or the Celtics
He
see
was a really
something
good
there.
college player.
Yeah, so that's the thing. I will give the Celtics the Celtics get the benefit of the doubt. Like the Celtics and the Pacers, not the Pacers, them two actually. I will give the Celtics, the Thunder and the Pacers and the Heat with Pat Riley. I will give them a little bit of leeway. Warriors too. Now, I haven't seen any team be perfect. Right. So I still think there's, still plenty of room for any team to grow and still mistakes. But a lot of teams don't give me a lot of faith, but Minott's really good, or at least productive per minute, right? So they're basically replacing Kristaps Porzingis's production there. And if they see something in Garza, because to your point, a lot of the center market wasn't there, though, Brian, this is a weird one. I missed this and I'm sorry. Kevon Looney has gone to the Pelicans.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
here's the thing. Super productive player, super great player. He is also a player that tried to play through, I want to say, a broken sternum in the NBA Finals.
He's
Um,
had multiple surgeries on both of his hips. Yeah.
he only played 1,100 minutes last season. It's one of those that, and I'm trying to look up. Do you happen to know off the top of your head that the terms of his contract was it that
Yeah.
much?
Yeah, 2 years, 16 million.
get your money, Kavan.
Yeah.
Like I I hate this. You know, I could wind up feeling real stupid if he puts up another season like he did the year that I thought, if you recall this, Brian, the year that the Warriors won, they beat Boston. I made the argument that Kevon Looney deserved the Magic Johnson Award, which for those that don't know, the NBA introduced two new awards, the Magic Johnson and Larry Bird Award, that goes to the MVP of the Western Conference Finals and Eastern Conference Finals, respectively. And first off, no doubt that Steph Curry deserved the Finals MVP. Finally added the Bill Russell to his award, his award case. The like only thing Steph Curry was missing from his was Hall of Fame career. But I was like, Kevon Looney played so amazing. But I'm just, I'm watching the last couple of years, and I am there was a production dip in 2024. He did bounce back in production this year, but still not to his peak. I've called this like a dead cat bounce before on older players, right? They have that one season and can't. I am inclined to believe that Kevon is going to not be worth that, which makes me feel bad. And then I hope all parties involved. I hope that the Warriors are like, we're happy you're getting paid. The player I compare this to is like Bruce Brown, where I'm just like, get your money. You helped a lot. So I've got no complaints with that.
Well, okay, I should be clear. It's 8 million per 16 total, not 16 per.
Oh, okay, that's not bad. That's
Yeah.
I thought he got more. Yeah, that's not horrible. But so okay, here's the rough part. I think he's worth the money, but I don't think the Warriors were wrong to kind of let him
That's
walk
right.
and not match.
Yeah.
Especially because they could have matched, and he might be untradeable if he got injured. So,
He
speaking
just
of,
he looked really bad physically last year, but yeah, I mean, he's not that old and he's made comebacks before, so I hope he does it again.
all right, we've got I think we already talked a little James Wiseman. Never know for the Pacers. They're just looking for warm bodies at this point. The Heat acquired Norman Powell from the Clippers and resigned Davion Mitchell. Both of those are close to average players. Absolutely no complaints with that.
I think the
Uh,
Clippers needed salary.
it's it's weird, isn't it? Like how the rules have changed, et cetera, where even the like rich teams just have to like dump ticky-tack contracts to like avoid the apron or avoid penalties. And yeah, this is a good spot to take a brief break and talk about it. We don't have that many transactions to go through to finish up. Right? We've made it through the first half. But you were talking this post that was from Draymond Green.
Yeah.
And then there was a good response the way you phrased it that I like. Bobby Marks and Draymond Green were both talking about free agency, and you kind of said they were doing the talk past each other
And they were both
because
replying to an initial post too, and I felt like all three of the posts were all over the place. So this is all confusing to me, Dre. That's my context.
yeah. So basically, and do you know what the initial post is? Because I see the Bobby Marks one
No, it was on Facebook Threads, I believe,
or something, but
which I'm not really on.
yeah, me either. But I mean, the point is, Draymond Green's like, man, we're going into July 4th. This is the NBA offseason. And it's we were right again, Brian. We get to be right. I was like, hey, there was a bunch of news to start this offseason, and we have to let it sustain us through the long offseason and or Brian really get into the WNBA, which I am hyper conflicted on some teams, right? Where I want to root for the Valkyries as a fan, but then as a fantasy player, I have a season long league I'm inclined to root against. So it's a rough world. So we'll be talking more WNBA. So that's what we're going to fill our cup with this for now. And that's actually awesome, right? This is USFL days where the NBA ends and you still have good basketball to be played. I absolutely love it. I think WNBA is ripe for an explosion for a variety of reasons. Caitlin Clark last season, Paige Buckets this season, two expansion teams next season. So good news, future us. Like that's the answer, right? Draymond Green is complaining that the NBA offseason is boring. And I've said, hey, we've seen this before. There's a bunch of movement at the beginning of the offseason, and then it's crickets. So now we have WNBA. That's the answer to Draymond Green. Go watch some WNBA. Go watch some fun games there. And what you and I were talking about back and forth ahead of time was kind of what Bobby Marks has said was he's going, hey, free agency shrunk because all of the players just decided it was safer and all of the NBA teams basically had their extensions wrapped up. We've known for years that the off season starts before the off season, that there are wheeling and dealings that are done. I mean, case in point, as we're going over the transactions over at ESPN, the giant trade that did get Kevin Durant to Houston. First off, it ballooned into a 7-team trade just to make things work logistically. And second off, that was recorded July 6th, and we were talking about that over 2 weeks ago. So it's just going, the offseason starts before the offseason. A lot of players just decided for safety this season. That's what Bobby Marks is saying. Like 50 players just signed their extensions and teams knew it. And then you and I were talking pre-show saying the world has just changed a lot. Older days, the reason the NBA offseason took so long probably wasn't because it was more exciting or players didn't know what they were doing. It was because it took longer to fax and mail things. And that's disappeared, right? In the modern day where we have email and text, and then we also have a bunch of sites, ESPN, Yahoo, working to scoop each other on stuff, all of the news just gets out super quick and the deals just get done super quick. And that's because a bunch of the people in this sphere have just kind of learned how to game it to be as fast as possible, which makes sense. So it's not, oh man, back in my day, things were better. It's like the streaming era. Back in our days, Brian, we would have to wait a week in between shows. Seasons were 26 episodes long, where in the streaming era, you get 10 episodes all at once. There are issues with that, but it's not that, hey, back in our day, it was better because it was better. It can be, hey, back in our day, it was better because the logistics prevented it from being done as quickly.
Yeah, here's something funny about that though. So when I was a kid, not only did I have to wait a full week for, the next episode of the show, we didn't even know what was going to be on TV the next week. There's no listings, right? There's no
You are
set
able
top
to
box.
remember
So my
pre-TV
point is,
guide days?
the point is, yes, we waited for the TV guide to come in the mail, and if you're young, it was this book of TV listings that you received in the mail that told you it was going to be on TV the next week. And we were so excited. We wanted to know what sports games were going to be on, what movies were going to be on, because that was the only thing we could watch, and the TV guide was the only way we knew it was going to be on.
Well, Brian, do you remember this for me and in the Denver Post, which, my parents subscribed to when I was a kid, the comics page, like the entertainment section had the nightly TV listing. So I would do that in the morning. I would eat my cereal, I
Mm,
would read the comics, and I would look through, um, I would look and see what was going to be on TV that night. Yeah, they had these like little Gantt chart block chunks. I mean, they're still
yep.
around. You still have this, but it's like, yeah, we can see it on DVR and see it in real time. So yeah, it's just going, yeah, the world's gotten faster. I agree that there were some benefits to slow things. Like I do think long form television with a week between each episode and thoughts probably had some goodness, but like that's gone. That's been gone for a while. And what you pointed out is like Draymond Green tried to use this as a political maneuver where he was saying if if he was in charge of the players union, this wouldn't be an issue. And Bobby Marks is like, hey, the players are still getting paid. And I mean, I am inclined to agree with that. The rough part is if we look at the modern landscape of the NBA, we really do wind up with the fact that players are getting paid better. We back in the day, we've interviewed him on the show. Paul Shirley was a journeyman in the NBA in the 2000s. And that means he, went undrafted, would get signed to 10-day contracts, would go play overseas. And, he's got a great book called Can I Keep My Jersey? On how, he got shafted on pay from like Greece and stuff. And then I'm just using this as a comparable. Let's see, can I get his salary? I'm just looking at like the last player in the draft, Jabari Walker, right? Jabari Walker was picked, the last player picked in the draft that got paid, and he is going to make over the course of his career $5 million. Now he's probably done, right? It looks like he's signed a 3-year contract and he's on his last one. And I don't know how much he'll play or what else he'll get, although he did play 60 games for Portland last season. He's part of why DeAndre Ayton was probably upset with Portland because they weren't winning. But just the modern NBA, even the worst player in the draft is a millionaire now. That didn't used to be the case. He used to be the worst player in the draft, maybe got a couple of years and got kicked out. So things have changed. Things are better for the players. I feel the nostalgia. I don't think Draymond being in charge of the players union would have changed anything. But I do also think it was just like this was an offseason where a bunch of players knew what they were doing. I'll also throw part of the reason that happened is it does seem like um, Jimmy Butler and Luka Doncic moving at the trade deadline, that was super atypical. Having two-star trades at the trade deadline and not the offseason doesn't happen. And I think that also sped up the offseason.
Yeah, almost every NBA podcast you listen to now, when they're doing some kind of analysis, they'll say, well, there's a 0% chance of this guy getting traded, is what I would have said before Luca got traded. Now I have no clue. Anything can happen, right? So I, I think what you're saying is right, though. I think, those are much more rare. As far as this free agency thing goes, first of all, yeah, I mean, Draymond and Bobby Marks are not even answering this guy's question, or not his question, but his complaint, right? And I think you are a lot better though, and that's the whole like tampering period and collusion and all that just makes it ridiculous, right? Because what this guy is wants is the drama. He wants the TV, the aspect of it. All these trades dropping after they've been happening, kind of in secret or half secret for a few weeks before. And it's just stupid, right? It should be the fact that there's an earlier negotiating period now for the players and teams before free agency, like Bobby Marks is saying, is good, but they should just be able to do more of that, right? So yeah, I mean, I of course want the players to have more power instead of having a dramatic a dramatic off season. So I wish, yeah, they could just negotiate more often and more out in the open. And if it wasn't for these tampering rules, this wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, it's like that's the thing. If we want it to be more entertaining, they need to change the product to be more entertaining. And I know last show you were saying this. It is so frustrating how much the people that first off pay for this. So like ESPN, right, pays millions of dollars for the rights to NBA games. And they have their analysts, and you have the people that make their money doing NBA news. And when you look at it, you're like, why are you paying all this money for this thing that you seem to hate? We could make the NBA offseason more enjoyable by changing the rules with how you could release it. But we're in the scoop era, right? So everybody wants to be first. So all of the news gets thrown out quickly, which is just frustrating, which also forces the players and the teams to work quicker. And then, as you've mentioned, we've moved back the periods, and then we have these arbitrary deadlines that aren't even real. So it's just going, we can make this more entertaining, but it's not the fault of the players. It's not a fault of the era. It's just the system where it's at. And unless there's a change to the rules external to the players, that's not going to change.
This is I have to point out, this is such a masterclass in being a dick by Draymond. Like there's layers to it. Like in the first paragraph here, he shits on all the players and he says like, the players screwed up by not understanding how the new system works and not letting themselves get to free agency. And so that's kind of what Bobby Marks is playing to. He also, like you said earlier, he says, I should have been the I should have been the Players Association president. He just is like CJ McCollum screwed this up clearly. And then what does he do in this other paragraph? He just talking about, he's talking about all the people he knows, how he's friends with all the players and owners, so he loves them all anyway. And it's just like this is a masterclass of Draymond Green being himself.
Not a shocker. I mean, from one of the most well-regarded dicks in the NBA, so I'll give it to you. This is interesting. So I think what Terrence Mann, the Nets got him. And the only reason this is funny is like, Terrence Mann at one point was like the holdup. And I think a James Harden trade goes for like nothing. But that's just how the NBA goes. And I seem to recall, I think Terrence Mann has kind of bounced around in productivity.
Yeah,
And
he's not bad.
he's fine. Yeah,
He
he's a fine player.
was Yeah, I mean, this is I forget the deal he signed. I think it's something like 3 years, 8 to 10 million per year, something like that. So it's fine. Yeah, I mean, he's not as quite as good as the Clippers thought he would be, and now he's been involved in some of these big trades just because he's a salary.
But yeah, it's just always amusing when, you look at a player's value one year, it's like a car or something, and you're just like, oh, they were worth this that time. Oh, now they're worth this.
But the reason we're bringing this up is because we thought they were overvaluing him back then. But
and
yes.
then yeah, and now he's kind of back to earth, and that was part of like what got Kristaps over there. But yeah, he made it to where did he wind up? Have it in front of
Brooklyn.
me. Brooklyn. Cool. Uh, don't care about Jordan Clarkson. That's not a good signing by the
Oh
Knicks.
no, I do care. This could like hurt
Oh,
the Knicks.
oh, cool. Interesting. I was like, oh,
No,
he's
I mean
not a good.
that's the whole comment. They have such a tight roster, and Clark's is kind of a loose cannon on offense. So if he plays
He's,
significant minutes, that could be a problem for them. But we'll see. Maybe on a better team he will be more contained.
he was good for 666 minutes. I absolutely love that on Cleveland in 2020, but has not been good in years. Do we have the terms? What did Clarkson get signed for?
No, it's not on here.
Okay, I'll see if Spot Track has it if they don't,
Yeah.
but it's not great. The next one, Brian, I absolutely love is the the Magic re-signed Paulo Banchero, the number one pick, the A points player, to a max contract, like quarter of a billion dollars. That is so wild, Brian, how the world has changed. And Mo Wagner, I've got to assume, to a much more favorable contract. We like Mo Wagner. He's an above average player. Paolo, it's still up there, Brian. This is what we said last week. Last week, you and I were discussing the box score versus the eye test, the fight as old as time, and you said they're the same. And I
Hmm.
said, Brian, you are a fool because people misuse the eye test all the time. And then I thought about it and went, and they misuse analytics. Paolo Banchero was not a good number one pick. There is always, always the out that draft picks are so underpaid, even at the top, that you really can't mess up the draft. It's hilarious to think that way, but it's like, on the one hand, the worst teams in the NBA get the top draft picks, and the worst teams in the NBA are bad because they're bad at player evaluation. So my 2 cents remains. I have more faith in the Celtics with picks 10 through 20, which is what they're able to get with their natural fall and trading around, et cetera, than I do in like any of the worst three teams in the NBA to pick good. But doesn't matter. Contract's so favorable. Even if you pick the worst player in the draft, you're fine. Where you screw up then is if you repay for him. And I'm with apologies. Caro has not been good. Now he might John Wallace. He might who do I want to say? It's Devin Booker, I'd say. I want to say Devin Booker did this too. There are a couple of players that were just god awful. And here's the thing, they didn't turn amazing, but they turned all right. John Wall did turn really good, but he was actually much faster. And I do know that Arturo did not hate him in the draft, just did not think he was the best player in the draft. But this exact problem, I just don't get it. And the Orlando Magic were a playoff team last year. They have some really good undervalued players. And this is just the classic problem of, hey, if you give all of your money to the yay points player, you're in trouble. And then it's even more problematic because he missed a bunch of minutes last season. So it's like the coming back from injury young player that has never been good. And then he also directly competes because you basically have Goga, I forget how you say his name, and Jonathan Isaac.
Hmm.
Some of their best players, Franz Wagner, are forwards. Actually, Franz Wagner is not good, never mind. But he's better than yeah, he's better than that. It's like basically if Jonathan Isaac's going to be competing with Paolo, that ain't great. So fun times.
Yeah, so they just decided that Wagner, Boncaro, and who's the other guy? Suggs, right? Where's Jalen Suggs on here? Yeah, I'm looking at their team list right now. Anyway, yeah, Jalen Suggs. Oh, he didn't have a great year either. That those are the guys, and that they're gonna pay them and go forward with them. And yeah, I mean, I agree it's a mistake. So Orlando was one of the best defenses in the league last year, and one of the worst offenses. So you shouldn't pay the guys taking all the shots when your offense is bad, right? That's just the basic comment you can make. I see Bankero as kind of an Anthony Edwards type of number one overall pick, however, right? A guy, a really skilled guy, athletic guy that isn't efficient yet, hasn't put it all together, and so therefore definitely shouldn't be the number one pick. But Edwards did develop into a great player, and the Wolves are probably really happy that they took him over some of the other players in that draft, right? Even though it took a few years. So can is that the exception that proves the rule though? Yeah, I mean just because he's skilled, I don't I can't see him getting really efficient all of a sudden when they're not adding a ton of, guards to take the pressure off of him.
And I'm happy to be proven wrong. Now, here's the other thing. It is possible that the Magic are like, here's the rough part. The Magic may be correct in re-signing him because if you let him walk out the door, you have nothing. And he does have value, right? He did, like, he put up a couple 50-point games last season, I want to say. I think he had one monster playoff game before they just got
A
blown
sharp
out.
team would trade him though, right? Instead of
Yeah, but
extending
that's the
him.
thing. They can sign him to that max deal and that box packing problem we just discussed. Now they have a $50 million like shopping card to go around to teams. That's the question though. Are they going to do it? So if Orlando shops Paolo in a year, I'll be like, oh, okay, they knew what they were doing. But as I mentioned, that's few and far between. And the Warriors and the Celtics are like the only two teams in recent history that have done that consistently where I believe that's a thing.
No, I would guess their rationale is he scores a lot of points and we need points. Unfortunately.
All right, we got this. I just laugh at this. This is a no-op, but the 76ers re-signed Cal Lowry. I just laugh at that because of course, way back in the day, Daryl Morey traded him off of the Houston Rockets, and then he went off to win a title. Cal Lowry did, and Daryl Morey did not. And Daryl Morey infamously talks about this in the Undoing Project, which is a book about behavioral economics. And Michael Lewis tries to paint Daryl Morey as this savvy person that uses behavioral economics. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? He lets so many good players out the door and stuff.
Don't,
So
yeah, just read Kahneman and Tversky directly, Thinking Fast and Slow. You don't need to read the Undoing Project.
yes, I was able to
Yeah.
make it through. I was able to make it through Thinking Fast and Slow, and with apologies, Kahneman, who I've conversed with once in email, but would say, with apologies, was an academic read. I will give you that
Yes.
people like Malcolm
Yes.
Gladwell and Michael Lewis are much more better,
That's
but
true.
I got through Thinking Fast and Slow. I thought it was a fascinating read. I could not get through. I have tried like 4 or 5 times, and every time I start the Undoing Project, I just have to quit. Now, Brian, I'm really a fan of this one. You put me on this player, Luke Cornett to the
Oh yeah, the
Spurs.
Eclipse.
Now, the only question we have for the Spurs is Stefan Castle. He was terrible last season, but won Rookie of the Year. So this is the question. Are the Spurs the savvy Spurs of old that are going to get Luke Cornett an undervalued asset? Can Victor Wembanyama come back healthy? I don't know the state of Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes, who
Twin
are older.
Towers, Cornette and Wemby out there at once, Trey.
Oh my gosh, no one gets a shot in. No one gets past the paint. So the question is,
2-3
what are the,
zone. Let's go.
I love it. What are yeah. Yeah, who do you get as your perimeter play? I mean, Chris Paul, he's still balling, right?
So that's the answer, I think, to your question about their savviness. They're letting Chris Paul walk. So
But I also don't know what you can do there. But it's
yeah.
just if they're building for the future, if they got Cornette and Wemby, those are younger players, right? I don't think Cornette's that old.
No, I
And
think
I
he's in
am,
his mid to late 20s.
yeah. So it's like it's really how healthy is Victor Wembanyama going to be? And yeah, Luke Cornett's already 29, so a
Yeah.
couple of years, but I love this trade. You set me on him. I forget what's his nickname. It's
I think it's the
the green
Eclipse.
it's the Green Cornet. You were saying the Eclipse. I love
Oh
it.
yeah, that's his special move that he makes when he, tries to block the vision from far away. We talked about this on a previous show.
Yeah, like yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
If
that's
it's
like
not the
that's
Eclipse, it's something like that.
I'm trying to see Kyle Anderson. None of these players really matter. Yeah, there's a trade. Doesn't matter. Okay, is Luke, and I think I'm looking at some. I am just skipping some, Brian. I'll be
Sure. Oh
100%
yeah, a lot
honest.
of these are just bodies.
Interestingly enough, Atlanta's picked up multiple productive players. One is Luke Kennard, who is just undervalued, it seems like.
Yeah.
So Atlanta's picked up some half decent players, and Atlanta in the past hasn't been terrible. I'm just trying to look. I don't think they were great last season, right? Oh, they were an eighth seed. I mean,
No, they made a lot of
yeah, they've made some decent moves.
yeah, I'm curious to look at their full roster now because they've been busy this offseason.
Yeah, it's always hard to tell because as I mentioned, outside of maybe OKC and Boston, not a lot of teams go where I say they don't have any weak players, right? And Atlanta, I think, has done more. They've done a couple of trades. I'm like, why did you do that? But more good than bad. And I mean, the interesting thing for me here is Trey Young is, of course, their star who scores really well. But they've got Dyson Daniels. I want to say Onyeka
Yep.
Okongwa, or
Okong
Kongwu. I
Wu.
mean,
Yep.
that sounds that looks phonetic. Jalen Johnson, Vit Krejci, Clint Capella looks like he's at least bounced back in production, if not in time.
He is
They
now
let
back on the Rockets.
Oh, back. Oh, yeah, that's right. They signed. So that doesn't matter what they let Clint Capella and Terrence Mann walk, but they're not horrible. So it's just like, and I do remember yeah, go listen back to 30 minutes ago. They picked up some good players. So yeah, I agree with you. I need to do the algebra to see if they got more bad than good, but they were a 42 win team last season. If they improve by 5 wins, that gets them comfortably into a decent playoff seed, 6 or 7, maybe 5, depending on how bad the East is. So far this offseason, in terms of kind of winners, in terms of actual action, I've got to give it to Houston and Atlanta.
Yeah,
All right.
Houston. Yeah, Houston looks amazing. We talked about them last year, and we'll talk about them again. I'm looking at Atlanta, and yeah, they're very interesting. They're the ones who took on Porzingis, right? And it's only 30 million for this year and UFA next year, so that's not a terrible long contract for them, but they're going to try to win with him, right? Can he stay healthy? Well, having Okongwu there as well is really nice. Between the two of them, that's a great, position group, as you'd say in the NFL. Jalen Johnson, they extended, and 30 million is a lot, but it's not really a lot in this day's NBA. So that's, a rookie max, basically. He's not
It's up
bad.
there. You last year you were saying about Austin. He's basically an Austin Reeves player. He's not that upper
Mm,
echelon that you like
yeah,
have to
good
resign, but
comparison.
he is that productive enough that you can't let him out the door for nothing, and you should offer them the max so that they want to stick with you no matter what. If they do, because I could see him having that jump if he gets healthy next season. He has had a very steady. He's had a good, sophomore, he had a good jump. He kind of held firm his junior year. And last year, he had a drop in minutes, but a boost in production. So
These
if
other
he does like,
players make so much sense. Dyson Daniels, extension eligible on a very cheap deal. They should absolutely extend him. One of the most exciting young defensive specialists in the league, with guys like Gary Payton, maybe on their last legs. Dyson Daniels is awesome, and you said Luke Kennard, awesome 3-point specialist for $11 million a deal. Kind of the opposite of Dyson Daniels. Players with defined roles. That's great for the Hawks. The big question is Risa Shea, right? He was, I think, the second or first overall pick last year. I don't know. I don't know a lot about him. I don't know what he gave them last year. He's gonna have a big role. Let's see what he can do. That's probably gonna be the key to their season.
well, I mean, what I loved last season, who's the coach now on, I forget people, but who's the coach now on the Warriors? Because I always get them wrong. I always get the wrong son of a former NBA
No,
player.
Steve Kerr still.
Oh, Steve Kerr's still the coach. So it
Yeah,
was, no, or was this, oh, yeah. So I guess it was Steve Kerr, but or who's the GM now of the Warriors? Now
Mike
that I'm my
Dunleavy Jr. That's
Dunleavy.
the
Okay,
junior you're
that's the
thinking
one I
of.
was forgetting. Okay,
Okay.
so here's what's messing me up because you got like Luke Walton out there being a coach,
Oh yeah.
Mike Dunleavy Jr. as an exec, Steve Kerr still the coach, but Mike Dunleavy last year was talking about your rookies who did play quite well.
Mm.
It was just like we're not counting on rookies in our first year, and so with Risa Shea, as you're saying it right. Let me see. Look at that. Yeah, good job, Risa Shea. Yeah, you got it exactly right, Brian.
Yeah,
Amazing
I
work.
mean, even though I said I don't know a lot about him, I have watched him play a fair amount, so I heard the announcers say it. But anyway, well, that's the thing, right? So when they took him at the top of the draft and then went him and started playing him a lot, they had Trey Young, but they weren't really trying to win. now they're gonna, if they finish lower than eighth next year, that's gonna be a disappointment. So his role is gonna matter a lot more.
One thing I really need to get back into the swing of is in past I've had, game by game logs and looking at stuff. And I mean, I feel that's really important. And a league that this is really hitting me in is the WNBA, where it's only 40 games, and that makes swings much more apparent.
Yeah,
And
we're halfway
Caitlin
done
Clark's,
already.
yeah, but Caitlin Clark's a good example where Caitlin Clark started off the season and looked like an MVP caliber player. And then her wins produced has dropped her below average. And that's because it's the Joel Embiid point. She came back from injury and was clearly not, 100% yet. So the same is true with rookie players where this happened with Victor Wembanyama, where if you look at Victor Wembanyama's rookie season at Boxscore Geeks, he's below average, which is fine. Rookies traditionally are below average NBA players. But I remember I cut it in half and I said, if you cut out the first half of the season and just look at the second half, he clearly grew and progressed. And like Risa Shea, as an example, had some injuries middle of the season. End of the season, this is too hard to know. But as an example, he had on the 10th, I'm trying to see the opponent. He had like a 38-point game, 38.5 block game against the Nets. So it's hard to say if they were playing or five foul game, not block, one block. But that's the question. Like, how's he going to be? But you shouldn't expect a bunch from young players. He was below average by the wins produced numbers. But yeah, if the Hawks just get a little better, he just gets a little better with age. I there's very few rookies. The only one was um Anthony Edwards, right? When he went to the Warriors. Anthony Edwards was the only rookie player that we kept saying if he just gets a little better, they're good, and he never did. But then he goes to the Warriors and was good. So I think maybe he just really hated Minnesota. So yeah, I'm
I
excited
think
about
you're
the Hawks.
mixing a few guys up because Anthony Edwards is still on the Timberwolves and was never on the
No, who
Warriors.
am I thinking of?
Oh,
Wiggins.
Wiggins. Okay,
Wiggins.
Wiggins.
Sorry, you're right. I always get Wiggins and Edwards just because their names are too close
They were
from
both
back to back.
first overall
Yeah,
picks.
first. But you're right, Joe. Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards is the one where we thought like not a great number one pick, but
Well,
hard
he
not
shot
to
like
love.
20% from three in college, and he only plays freshman year. It's like you're going to take a shooting guard, number one overall, that can't shoot. That's a problem, but learn how to shoot pretty well.
And I mean, he's still probably not as good as other players, but he's an above average player. He's an above average player that can attract other stars, and that's all you're looking for.
Yep.
All right, a lot of time in the Hawks, but let's go to the major one, Brian. This is one I did want to talk a lot of, which is the Nuggets acquired Cam Johnson from Michael Porter Jr. They finally moved on from Michael Porter Jr. And this has been kind of something in the tank for years, which is like the Nuggets just need to trade him, and it's like he's a really good player, and his star is really high, and can they really do it? And the funny thing is, Brian, I love this so much for two reasons because we looked this up before the show. The reason it's good for the Nuggets is Cam Johnson is the same production per minute as Michael Porter Jr., the same position, half the price. So the Nuggets are they're doing an Alex Caruso. They're trading a productive player, but they're getting back a productive player for it in exchange for a 2032 first round pick, Brian, which isn't as far away as I would like. That made me sad. It's only like 7 years away. It's not 10 years away like I thought when I first read it. And then they are also giving a trade exception, which the basically gives the Nets the ability to acquire extra salary if they want in a trade. And that seems good, but that's only if they use it. And teams like the Nuggets have had this in the past, and they just don't use it. So the question here is, are the Nets being savvy in using their extra cap space to pick up an exception they can use later to get more star players? Or did they just trade for Michael Porter Jr. in a draft pick in basically a not quite a dump situation, but I don't even know what to call it. It doesn't seem great.
Well, yeah, they're absolutely tanking, and it's the mode where we'll do any trade that lets us use our salary cap to pick up assets, even if that is a 2032 first round pick. So they're just open for business, right? They'd rather take on players' salaries to get picks than actually sign a player in free agency.
Yeah, so it's something. All right. We don't have many other good ones. Yeah, I've got that. That's good. Okay, okay, we get to stick on the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets re-signed Bruce Brown. I do kind of love this and am sad about it, which is Bruce Brown was a really productive player for the Denver Nuggets. Shout out to, former guest and co-host of the show, Chris Ye, who said we're going to love him. He was really, really good on Brooklyn. He didn't quite keep up the production on Denver, but helped Denver to their first NBA title and promptly walked out the door to Indiana for a 2-year, $46 million, 40, I want to say $45 million contract. So absolutely fantastic. Looks like last season he got injured. So he was productive-ish last season in very limited minutes for Toronto, got traded to New Orleans where he wasn't productive at all. Hard to say, right? Both injury, coming back from injury, limited minutes on a team that wasn't making the playoffs, but he's back on the Denver Nuggets for not much. He was a great bench player when we like won a title. So I'm happy to have him back. I'm happy he got paid. It's entirely possible he's just not going to be productive. He might be injured and he's done, but still happy for it. One of the trades, Brian, that I had remembered, but still is just hasn't been completed yet is, the Denver Nuggets getting Jonas Valanciunas, which I absolutely love and just would love to see the two towers, right? Valanciunas next to Jokic. Just can you
That
imagine?
means DeAndre Jordan's probably finished though in Denver.
Oh, well, I mean, DeAndre Jordan has been not, I love him, but it's like, I mean, what, he gets like 10 minutes a game at most.
Fair enough.
He
Fair
he's done
enough.
the like, he is very productive, but 700 minutes, and that's the thing, you do at a certain point with players like that where you're just like, we can't keep relying on the backup center who's a million years old and whose knees are probably gone. And I'm just trying to see the what's it called? The deal about Valanciunas because since it hasn't been completed, um,
My understanding as of, this morning, things could have changed since then, is basically Valanciunas was um, negotiating with a Greek team to try to go play in Europe and retire from the NBA. But since the Nuggets have his rights now, they decided to execute the trade. They control whether or not he can play in Greece, so they would have to release him. And it sounds like they're saying no, Valanciunas. We're not going to release you. You can't play in Greece. You must play for the Nuggets next season.
yeah, I hope so because I mean it's 10.4 million, and I just don't know what we had to give up for him, but it couldn't have been that much because
Oh no, it was a
real
player. I'm trying to remember who it was, but yeah, it was a player.
yeah, but I know it doesn't matter because if it's not Jokic, even like hell, I hate to say it, even Jamal Murray would be fine. So the Nuggets, I'm okay with them. I mean, the problem is the Thunder are just that far ahead, and the Thunder are young. That's the problem. The Thunder are on the upswing, right? Chet Holmgren, he's signed to a rookie max. That's the scary part. Rookie max. He's still young. He's still growing. He's still improving. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is entering his prime. That's going to be a tough team to compete with. The Nuggets have improved, but they were a like 50-ish win team last year, as you noted, on paper, probably closer to a 55 win team. Even if they improve themselves to, maybe 60 wins, which is a stretch, that's still going to be rough. But, I don't hate it. I always like when my teams do good stuff.
Yeah, I love all those players. We were talking about them last year, even before. We love this team. I'm still going to say, as of where we sit right now, Houston Rockets are my number one seed right
I
now.
did mention this to you, Brian. I told you the number. I won't necessarily tell the air, but I did something awesome, Brian. This is such an ADHD NBA fan thing to do. I apparently last year, when I was visiting Colorado in July, said, how the hell are the Oklahoma City Thunder an 8.5 to 1 dog to win the NBA title next year when they had just won, they had won over 60 games. They had lost to a surging Luka Doncic. I just like, give me a break. So apparently I bet on them to win the NBA finals and promptly forgot, Brian. I was rooting against them in the NBA finals, which would have cost me even more money as it was. They actually helped pay for part of a ticket to the NBA finals. But when you and I were talking the Rockets, I looked it up and the Rockets are in a similar boat. They're an 8.5 to 1 dog. It might be a little long before I get to go to a space. And now I'm saying on a public sphere, so you all might ruin my betting odds if you go bet that. But I was telling you, Brian, if the odds are still that good when I get to a betting market where I'm allowed to bet, I will absolutely put some money on the Rockets to win. And if they do, I'll talk to you about splitting, depending, or it can be fun. That's the fun thing about long odds like that is if it's 8.5 to 1 for them to win, then if they make it to, the second round of the playoffs, then you can easily make smart hedges to still win, where, you can basically drop it to a 4-to-1 odds to win, but you still like break even or whatever. So I'll keep you posted on that. Because it turns out I'm actually going to be moving in the near future to a betting market. So I'm excited about that. All right, Brian, there's some other ticky-tack trades. I don't think I missed any major ones, but feel free to let me know.
Yeah, I mean, there is a few from, the previous 2 weeks, but, we don't need to talk about them. We got a lot of time.
All right. So the very last thing to talk before we head out, unfortunately, is we got a betting scandal. So this already did happen with Michael Porter Jr.'s brother. I want to say Jonte Murray, where you essentially had a bench player that was feeding information on very obvious prop bets. And I do got to say and agree, prop bets are a problem because those, if you talk about messing with the line or even messing with the win-loss, there is so much money on the line in good teams. There's so much money on the line for good players that is hard to mess with. But a prop bet, players have so much control over, and especially for, say, a bench player. We saw Dejounte Murray. You could literally say, hey, the prop bet on me is for 2 rebounds this game. I'm going to get 1 rebound on my first stint, and then I'm going to be injured the second. And for what it's worth, another sport this is notoriously a problem for is tennis. Tennis is a sport where it is so easy to match fix for a variety of reasons. Betting purposes, but also trades. So if you're a player in a draw that doesn't really have a chance, but by losing, you let another player say, keep their eligibility or something, and you can do a trade. There are players that can make stuff like that. And actually, way back in the day, the book Freakonomics did this kind of analysis with sumo wrestling, but the same analysis has, I believe, been done with tennis. So anytime an individual player is in control of their fate, their ability to influence betting is problematic. And the thing for the longest time in the NBA has been, hey, they get paid too much. But we come to Malik Beasley, who is now the center of this. So John T. Murray was a bench player, I don't think making much of anything. Or a Porter, was it Porter? Not John T. Murray, John T. Porter.
Javon Porter,
So
yeah.
no, it was John T. It was John T. Porter, right? Am I wrong? I think that's the
Yeah,
player.
not DeJounte Murray, though, which you were saying earlier.
I'm saying too many, the names are crossed. Thank you, Brian. So let's get this straight. Okay,
Yeah,
everybody.
Javon Porter. DeJounte Murray, as far as we know, does
No,
not gamble.
no, but it is, his name is John T. Porter, right? And I believe he's brothers with Michael Porter. Is another one?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's a different Michael Porter
Too
Jr. brother
there.
that's in a scandal. He has two different brothers with scandals.
Oh my gosh, there are too many. And also there
We're
are tons
both
of,
thinking of different scandals. Sorry.
and there are tons of
Okay.
Porters in the NBA. They're not related, but John T. Porter is related to Michael Porter Jr. He
Yes.
did play with the Toronto Raptors and was like a bench player. And I'm going to look up his salary. He peaked at 1.9 million as a rookie deal, but he was making 300,000 with the Memphis Grizzlies, and then he was picked up on a 2-way contract with the Raptors. So that's the thing for him. You're like, you're guys playing a 2-way contract. Of course, he will, has an incentive to gamble and bet and feed information because he got involved in a betting scandal. And as mentioned, the betting scandal was he was messing with prop bets. And it just became too obvious because that's the other thing. You can look at the markets and you're like, wait a minute. Normally, prop bets for bench players, get like $100,000 in action, maybe altogether. There's a ton of action on this player that doesn't make any sense, and it's all on one side. That's the giveaway. So he was caught for that, and I believe expelled from the NBA. Now Malik Beasley has recently gotten in trouble, allegedly with the Pistons. So allegedly with the Pistons for doing this, because people were saying, "Oh, look at him messing up these key games in the playoffs," and people going, "Yeah, that's from a different year." But with the Detroit Pistons, they're saying that, hey, he was messing things up. And or actually it was 2 years ago. So I forget. I'm messing all the details up, Brian, as you can tell, because I read this story a week ago and then we waited a week to talk about it. But Malik Beasley is under investigation for, basically line fixing years ago. But what I noticed about him is this is a player that got signed by the Minnesota Timberwolves after his rookie contract and got a real deal, 13 million a year. But then he just, was not worth the money, and he signed with the Bucks for 2 million a year, and now he's on the Detroit Pistons for 6 million a year. It's a 1 year deal. And so I was saying, here's the other issue. You've got players that you're like, they're making too much money to really betting on it. But if you have players that maybe got used to a certain lifestyle, got used to 15 million a year and dropped to 2 million a year, they might be compromised, right? They might be taking out loans they can't do. You and I talking back and forth about this, I said sometimes it's also much stupider, which is they might talk to someone who say, hey, it's no risk. You're not going to lose anything. What's the big deal? Maybe similar logic to say Pete Rose back in the day. Hey, you're just betting on yourself. You're not wrecking anything. You're not ruining anything. So, but we've had our first major betting scandal now with, I would say, a slightly bigger player, right? So Jonte Murray, two-way player. Malik
Jonte
Beasley,
Porter.
oh my God, Brian. Thank you. Jonte Porter, I'm so glad you're here. Otherwise, no one would know what the hell
Well,
I'm
I'm
talking
making
about.
it worse. I was talking
Well,
about the
well,
other brother. There's actually a third brother that did something worse. He's in jail for manslaughter.
oh
So
my God.
he has three brothers.
Do not feel for, yeah. And Michael Porter Jr. handled that pretty, he's had some other stuff that I'm not a fan of, but that stuff he has handled pretty gracefully. But Malik Beasley was like, a first round pick by the Nuggets, did make good money, and he's like the first player. Now, the rough part I'm going to give you, Brian, is this is just going to get swept away. And my easy example is Tim Donaghy, a top ref that ref some of the biggest games, that even ref some of the most contentious games. Remember those, people may forget the Kings and the Lakers had a really infamous game 6 and 7 in the NBA playoffs that some people alleged were fixed. And Tim Donaghy was involved in those. And Tim Donaghy even has phone records with other NBA referees that are still in the NBA. But basically, the NBA said it was just Tim Donaghy. They kicked him out and said, we're good, and moved on. This is actually chapter 1 of the book, Wages of Wins. Wages of Wins is the book that started a lot of the research and stuff Brian and I talk regularly. The most famous part of that book was him calling Allen Iverson overrated, a take that has aged beautifully, and everybody is now on our side. And I don't forget when you weren't. Everybody out there, I still remember. But chapter 1 of Wages of Wins was actually about the inelasticity of fan demand in sports. Fans don't care. And I come back to this every time one of these scandals comes up. Every major North American sport, I want to say recently, has had major scandals. We've had Deflategate in football, right? The Houston Astros cheating with the sign stealing, multiple basketball things, collusion, tampering, etc. Tim Donaghy, as I just mentioned. There's probably something in hockey, Brian, but I just haven't paid close enough attention. And fans always come back, and the league's always able to sweep it under the rug. And we've already said the leagues are too embedded with betting money at this point to move on. So the rough reality, Brian, is I think this is showing that there are cracks in the system and this belief that, hey, too much money is going to keep players from gambling on themselves in the NBA. But I also have another flip side, which is to say also exact same problem Draymond Green was having back in the past. This is going to get noticed because a Tim Donaghy reffing scandal, there's a great book on that called Gaming the Game. And gamblers caught on. Gamblers caught on that games that Tim Donaghy was reffing were problematic. And funny enough, very much like the TV guide, Brian, back in the day, they didn't release ref schedules ahead of time. But if you were savvy, you could figure it out, right? So it's basically going, if you had insider information and could determine when Tim Donaghy was reffing, you could bet on it. And a lot of gamblers were able to figure out he was a problem. Nowadays, if you have a player like Malik Beasley, I can't even imagine it lasts that long. I can even imagine there might be people at FanDuel and DraftKings whose job it is to look out for stuff like that. So I think there is an increased problem in betting because the money has exploded. There are still players that could get compromised or just make silly money decisions. I don't think it lasts as long. And then I also think there's just too much money in it and fans don't care enough for this to be anything. So it's really weird that we saw this story. I was like, uh-oh. And then when I got to ruminate on it, Brian, I'm like, I hate to say it. I think this is a no op.
Yeah, and what I'm mostly seeing the debate around this is, are the Pistons going to bring him back or not? And it seems like Ron Holland is gonna take over that backup point guard job, and that's about it. And yeah, I don't see a whole lot about in the national news anyway what this means for the league. But to your point from earlier, from the Detroit News, a local paper from July 1st, Robert Snell, Malik Beasley was $8 million in debt as this was going on. So
Yep,
someone
that
had
track.
leverage over him, and he got in trouble.
And I mean, that's the case, but it's like, yeah, I think the issue is here's a good comparable. I worked at Target, and I worked at Target during kind of you and I keep talking evolution of things. I worked at Target during the evolution of credit cards becoming the norm. When we were younger, it used to be the case actually that credit cards were kind of annoying. They took a while. You might have to dial up. You might have to do the card thing, right?
I
Cash
had to
was
do
king.
that
Oh my
as
gosh,
an
right?
employee. Yeah, not in retail, thankfully. So there weren't people waiting for me to do it.
At Christmas at Target once, I had the machine wasn't working and I had to do the micro paper thing, right?
Yep, yep.
And I broke someone's card with those little things that went
Yes,
back and forth.
because it's kind of a big, mechanical metal machine if you've
Yeah.
never seen one before.
Yeah. Probably talks like we're talking crazy out here. But yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
but I saw the evolution of cash to credit card. And then I also saw the evolution of credit card where you'd have these machines where if you'd have to check people's IDs. And you've probably seen this now. We have reached a point where Target will just let if you pay little enough money, they don't ask to check your ID, they just let you go. And I got to see
Interesting.
that change because what happened is the credit card company said it was worth the hit on making sure any fraud happened with the cards for the upside in volume. Just to let during Christmas, if you slow down the people
Mm,
going through Target lanes 10% during Christmas time, you lose 10% of the sales. Some percent of that 10% is going to be fraudulent. But first off, like credit card companies insure that, et cetera. So it's like they're like, we will take the hit. We will take the insurance hit that we have to pay for that to guarantee this. The NBA is the same way. They're going, some players are going to be stupid, but we're going to catch them. We're going to shut it down early. To your point, I'm noticing the exact same thing. That was a big story for one day. And the reason I don't remember the details right on this show as we're rediscussing it is you're right. It's not on any of my normal feeds. And I follow basketball feeds. I click on this stuff, the side articles that show up when I'm looking up Jonas Valanciunas articles, usually will show stuff like that. It is gone. And it makes sense, right? Where, you know, if ESPN is bringing you NBA news brought to you by FanDuel, they're not going to be saying there's a real problem. Your games are fixed, right? Because if they say that, then their customers who are going to bet aren't going to want to bet. So you're
I'll
right,
make a
Brian.
counterpoint though. This
Ooh,
will
and
be the real test. So what's happened right now is that we know there's an FBI investigation. He hasn't been charged yet or anything like that. There hasn't been any court cases. So what I'm guessing is everyone's kind of holding back until something solid comes out of this. Now, if the feds throw the book at him and then there's no reporting, that will be more troublesome. But yeah, I think the story may need to develop more.
but here's the thing: if the feds throw the book at them, the NBA will just do what they did with Donaghy. It was
Probably, yeah, we'll
just
see.
him. It was just one bad actor. Like
You might be right.
this is the Trump era of politics, which sucks so much, which is going, if a scandal happened and we saw it, and the scandal ends and it kind of ends in a whimper. And the same people are involved. You go, uh-oh, those people now have a playbook for the next time this happens. And, we'll stay out of politics for a little longer, but yeah, that's certainly happening in the United States. And that's the case with betting scandals in the NBA. There was a DFS scandal way back in the day that was a big deal. There was, as mentioned, Tim Donaghy. The NBA has weathered those, right? There was the Houston Astros in baseball fixing things. The sports leagues know how to deal with this at this point. So like it's cynical of me to say it, but that's just my 2 cents is they know how to deal with this. It's going to be a no op. If I'm wrong, it's very similar to Paolo Banchero. I'm happy to be proven wrong. Paolo could come out and be a star. Happy to see that happen. Happy to see this actually be a bigger deal. And have some hits taken in the NBA against it, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, and this, I guess it's worth pointing out that this is the same probe that ensnared Jonte Porter. So it's an ongoing investigation, and this is also the same probe that was looking at Terry Rozier, and I guess I don't know if they still are or not, or
Interest.
if
That's
he's
a
been.
bigger name. Yeah.
But the point is, this has been ongoing for a long time, so I'm just gonna wait and see what happens.
I like your take. I like your take. All right, Brian. So we're into that. I'm thinking next show we might be able to do more WNBA unless there's another major trade. I'm excited. We're gonna see. I told you this before the show. The keep in betting land. The over under to start the season on the Valkyries was 14 wins. And Brian, it is actually a dream of mine to make it out to Golden State, to the Golden State, right? To the Golden State, to California, to see a Valkyries game at some point. Um, so if you've got any in your future calendar, possibly this year, keep me posted because that even though I'll be moving to a warmer climate, I'm still moving to a spot with winters. And so, wintertime is always a good time to travel. And heck, if there's an excuse to see a Valkyries game during that time, I may be down. So I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, I was talking about it with my friends and family at the beginning of the year, and we just decided we might want to wait, and see if we can get cheaper tickets in the middle of the season. They've sold out every game still. So I don't know, maybe these tickets are just going to be tough to get forever, but yeah, I might have to wait until next season. I don't know, but it's a
Well,
great stadium, it's a great arena. There's it's a great kind of area around it with some fun restaurants. So yeah, you will enjoy going to that stadium.
I think I've been to one Golden State game back in the day,
Oh,
and I
okay, so
think I saw
okay.
them play the Pelicans, if I recall.
Nice.
So that could be fun. So let's see. Let's take an example, Brian. August 17th, which I would not be able to make. Geez, these are real. I'm actually quite happy now. I mean, there's affordable prices, right? There's like $50 seats. So I'm looking at Atlanta at Golden State on August 17th. But yeah, these like courtside seats for 500. This is amazing to see really good ticket prices, and there's still good medium range. Like there's like 100 on the second level. So,
No,
but that is I am so excited about that, Brian, to
you probably
see.
saw this, but their ticket sales are so good that the WNBA already said we're expanding like 3 or 4 more teams in the next few years. Like we're getting one new team every year for the next 3 years.
I'm so excited about that, Brian. All right. Well, speaking of which, I'm gonna let you in a secret. After this, I'm actually gonna do some WNBA API work for to make sure some data gets out. So I'm gonna go do that, Brian. You've just made me excited to do that. Thank you for listening to the Box Score Geek Show. Sorry to be despondent on betting. Let us know if we're wrong. You can find myself as Nerd Numbers on Blue Sky. I occasionally hop onto Twitter to check NBA news, but don't really post there. Brian is lurking as B Foster on Blue Sky. Anywhere else worth looking for you, Brian, that you want people to know about?
Nah, I'm around.
Brian's around. If you want, just yell Brian Foster and say a cool NBA take, and he'll pop up.
Yep.
And then, of course, you can find the Box Score Geek Show any place podcasts are found. Look at boxscoregeeks.com for NBA numbers, possibly WNBA numbers in the future. I'll keep you posted where those go. And then, twitch.tv /nerd numbers. We've been going about every 2 weeks, Brian. We don't have a quite regular enough to know, but if you follow us on there, you can catch the show live. And if not, I do post the unedited full show on YouTube. That's the first place it goes before I edit. And last time, Brian, I just had so much else going on. I was a few days late on the edit. So if you want the first cut, youtube.com nerd numbers. All right, we'll catch you next time with some WNBA news guaranteed.